Thank you. Questions 36, 37, and 38 are answered in a movie that I did not show you this time. 36, 37, and 38. Come toward the end of a movie that tells you a story. I used to have a whole bunch of study goals based on this movie, and then I trimmed it out because for a couple of years I had to make this unit shorter. And then I went back to a 4-week unit. But I didn't put back all the questions. And now that it's down to just 3 questions, we might as well skip the movie and I'll just tell you some of the important stuff. I should point out that water policy is a really big whoop in agriculture, and the College Board has asked some interesting water stuff. So I'll try to tell you a little story for background. In the 1920s, if you wanted to have a timeline, it would probably take like 2 sentences. It might be worth it. 1920s, we experienced this thing called a dust bowl, which was a collapse of our corn belt, of our American agriculture. And this was partially responsible for the Great Depression of the 1920s and 30s, a big economic collapse. A lot of Americans were poor, a lot of Americans were out of work because our economy really, really, really broke down, and a lot of Americans couldn't find food. The Dust Bowl, Great Depression, 1-2 punch combo, pretty bad news for our country, kind of some of the darkest periods in U.S. history. Maybe you've heard, but we had this president named Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR. If you want to correct me on that name. It's Delano, right? Okay. FDR had this idea that maybe to get Americans working, we would just invent federal projects, go into debt, but if everybody's working, they'll spend more money, and they'll have more money, and they'll spend more money, and so that'll restart economic activity, and then the federal government might get more taxes from all that money changing hands. This was called deficit spending, and it was an early example of deficit spending, and it was called the New Deal. Raise your hand if you've heard of the New Deal in a history or economics class or something. Okay. And one of the things that was a keystone of the New Deal was Hoover Dam. Anybody seen it outside of Las Vegas? You can like drive like 40 minutes from Las Vegas to see it. Hoover Dam? Just you and me. Okay. Hoover Dam, somebody maybe, oh, you're right there. What dates was it, Luke? Hoover Dam. 32 to 36? 30 to 34?
Started 31, ended 36.
Thanks. So this is for your timeline.
Building or just functioning?
Well, this is sort of, I wanted to save some suspense. To get us out of the Great Depression, FDR, New Deal, use a bunch of federal debt to fund projects that presumably would heal the economy, like Hoover Dam. You go down to the Colorado River, it looks similar to the Grand Canyon. You know, big old canyon. And some nerd was like, I'm pretty sure that we could pour concrete and stop the canyon and make a reservoir, and then we could open the reservoir and let water out whenever we want water, and we could make electricity and like provide drinking water. And FDR was like, I don't know, let's check it out. And he like rolled the dice and they went for it. There are no words, there is nothing like this in your generation. It is impossible to imagine how big of a big deal this was. Just for the, let me try to explain how big of a deal Hoover Dam was. It was the largest building project ever started at the time. You don't have to look it up, we're good. So you don't need to check on that right now. Largest project ever. The most concrete ever used in a project, the most energy ever used in a project, the most expensive thing ever built, the tallest thing ever built, the most massive and heaviest thing ever built, the most workers, the most concrete, the most energy ever went into a project. It had never been tried before, and they finished it in just over 4 years. Like, I don't know if that impresses you at all, but like, I have a neighbor who's been trying to build like an extension onto her house for like 5 years and it's still not done. I've heard of people that spend more than 4 years building a deck. Hoover Dam was built around the clock. There would be an 8-hour shift followed by an 8-hour shift followed by an 8-hour shift, 24 hours a day. They would lose a worker every 25 hours on average.
Death?
Yeah,
Like
I
disability?
was like,
No, death, yeah, death.
oh shit. So
Yeah.
a worker a day?
It was just better than one per day. Like in a what's a year, 365? It would be like 347 dead people per year, something like that. You can Google the numbers.
Oh, what?
It was super dangerous work, but people were so desperate for work, like, dude, an 8-hour a day job that's gonna last 5 years, I'm in. And they had like barriers in front of the hiring office. Cause, you know, like this is the Great Depression, people would like camp out, like set up like a bedroll and like a little tarp and a bucket and be like, I'm just gonna sleep here in case you guys need me, I'll be ready right outside. Because people were like so desperate for work. People would rappel and jackhammer the canyon wall on a rappel device.
There's videos of people doing that. It's so cool.
It's pretty nar. If you go to Hoover Dam, right next to Las Vegas, they have like history of Hoover Dam and all these pictures of how it was built. And I'll show you guys some pictures later. Luke's helping me with a slideshow. And I have another slideshow about Hoover Dam and the water unit. The only reason I mention this is because Hoover Dam was like, huh, look what we just did. And it worked. Like, what has America pulled off in a 4-year period while you've been alive that makes you completely reimagine humanity's potential? Like, we got Obamacare and then we started to cut it up. That's your generation. Right?
That's your generation.
Like, what's happened to... No, you don't have to care about Obamacare. I mean, like, what has the US government completed in your lifetime that makes you really, like, shakes up big paradigms? Like, FDR was like, I don't know, we'll just plug this giant canyon and make, like, the biggest body of water ever and make the cheapest electricity ever.
Almost our generation, but, like, the repercussions after 9/11. There was that.
Yeah, but we've been doing war forever.
No, I mean, like all of the security and stuff.
Yeah, maybe, yeah, Patriot Act stuff, maybe, yeah. I mean, like, putting a human on the moon was a pretty big deal. Oh, I think that was a big whoop.
Our hopeful impeachment.
But I kind of feel like this was one of the biggest big deals. One of the biggest big deals. Once Hoover Dam was built, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Once Hoover Dam was built, we started building dams all over the Colorado River. We made free electricity and reliable water in like the biggest no man's land of the United States. All this desert was like, you put people there, no problem. Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, all the way down to Santa Fe or whatever. Like, yeah, no big deal. Just like build some dams and move some water around. The reason I mention this is that generation started ignoring what's natural for rivers and thinking, well, if we dam them, we control the water, we control the electricity. Fast forward a couple of years, please look up, this is something you need to know. The Central Valley Water Project came right after Hoover Dam. Federal government says, that worked out. So where else could we put some dams? From anywhere you are in the room, this should be obvious to you. Look at that big patch of green right there, surrounded by mountains with a teeny little outlet. Like that's perfectly flat. And it's low, near sea level. So all the water is going to go to that. And these mountains are huge. Includes the tallest mountain in the United States, in the continental United States.
Mount Whitney.
And those mountains get all this jet stream. So they fill up with snow. Look, they're drawn white because they're always snowy. And like, you mean we can plug the rivers and get free water plus electricity? Did someone say free water and electricity? And so in California, we spent like a huge chunk of federal dollars to plug all the rivers. Someday if you're bored, you should look at how many. But check this out. Look, just see if you can follow my hands. I'll try to hit them all. These are all the reservoirs.
Imagine like someone else walking into the classroom.
I swear they just hit back and get a cut.
I can't even, I'm disturbing my neighbor's class now. But there are reservoirs all through the Sierra. Reservoirs all through the Sierra. As part of this thing called the Central Valley Water Project, where we just took all those rivers and instead of letting the snow melt go out to the ocean, we just went bloop and we plugged it and we made reservoirs, and then now we have pipes and canals and valves all controlled by like 4 people in Sacramento, by the way. There's like this one control room, it's smaller than this, and they just have like a bunch of old, crusty computers, like way old computers. And they go like beep, 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 and like somewhere away all the valves open, and like all the water comes out, and like you get to flood wherever you want. Oh really, that was identified as like a major security threat to our national infrastructure. After 9/11, it was considered to be like one of the greatest liabilities. Because like if somebody crashed a plane into that, it could really F up California. Over a period of 7 years, I don't know how much it was. I'm hoping somebody will Google this and get it straight for me. Over a period of 7 years, we made something like 300 reservoirs, something like $70 billion of federal tax dollars. You can Google it to get the right numbers, whatever. It's a crazy amount. But check this out. We turned this big flat desert that would occasionally flood into a permanently irrigated farmland. This is some of the most productive farmland on Earth. It's exceedingly dry most of the year, so we get to control it. We just get all this free snowmelt from the Sierra, and we just go blip, 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 and you open the faucet, and by the way, that water extends all the way to your tap. We in Santa Barbara are the end of the pipeline from the Central Valley Water Project. Yeah.
In your opinion, is that a good or bad thing?
I don't want to label it because it's both. It's good in the sense that the California economy, the 5th largest on Earth, is primarily fueled by agriculture. Do you all know that California makes more agriculture money than any other kind of money? Like Hollywood is smaller than ag. And agriculture makes more California dollars than Silicon Valley.
Silicon. Sorry.
They're just words, bro. I don't know. Silicon is what it's called. It's not silicone, it's silicon.
Are we?
Sound the same, but they're different. One is an element, one is a compound. Okay. So now some study goals. The Central Valley Water Project was a huge transformation of the landscape. If Hoover Dam was one big dam, the Central Valley Water Project was one big network of dams. We completely rebuilt this entire ecosystem. If you look at the size of the US, that's a huge landscape change. And so one thing that happened was number 36, we erased one of the largest lakes in the United States. I think it was the number 3 or number 2 largest lake in the country.
It was the second.
Second? Now it is gone. It used to be right here, I believe. I don't know, somewhere in this area, in the southern part of the Central Valley. The second biggest lake in the United States, completely erased. It doesn't exist anymore. You can walk across the second biggest lake in the United States because now we grow cotton there. Because all the water that used to spill to the bottom is stuck in those reservoirs above it.
Wait, what?
Yeah. So I hope everybody understands gravity.
Yes.
Water comes from the mountains, downhill, into the second largest lake in the United States. But if you block all that water in the mountains to fill your reservoirs, then you're not going to have any water left to flow into the lake. So we dried up the lake, and now we control that water flow to make it into farmland. Number 37, this idea caught on. All over the United States, senators were like, oh my God, did you hear what California did? They made a proposal and the federal government gave California like 10, 15, 30, 50, I don't know how many billions of dollars. So all those California senators, they got famous. Everybody loved them because federal money was coming into California. Do you understand how federal money works? Everybody pays taxes to the federal government, and the federal government can spend that money on whatever the federal government thinks is a good way to spend the money. Congress is kind of in charge of that money. So if the federal government wants more military, then we spend all of our national money on the military. Or if they want more health care, then we spend all of our federal money on health care. But the Central Valley Water Project was taking U.S. money over to California and saying, here you go, California, we need more farmland. I'm sure we're all going to enjoy the lettuce. Here's billions of dollars of federal money for one state. Can you imagine when that congressman went back on the campaign trail? They were like, millions of jobs. That's me, everybody. Thanks. And everybody just like throws their underwear at him, like, oh, we love you! Like lighters and stuff. Autograph my hairy chest? That's what I always say whenever I see a senator. There's a name for this. When you bring home a lot of bacon. You all know what it means to bring home the bacon?
Make money.
To make money, because during the Great Depression, food was really hard to come by. So if you had like a really good day at work, you could go to the butcher and be like, no bones for me today. I'll take the bacon. And the butcher's like, damn, you're gonna have a good night, bro. And you show up at home and you're like, hey, baby, I got a pound of bacon. And your wife goes, oh, dreamy. Do you like all the embedded gender roles? But it's historically kind of accurate that bringing home the bacon was a saying for having like a really good day at work and you get a bunch of money that you can take to make your household more happy. And so pork barrel legislation is bringing a bunch of federal money to your constituents, to your voters. You say, hey guys, jobs for everybody, millions of dollars coming into Santa Barbara so that we can build a dam. If somebody's got millions of dollars to spend, you're like, I'll sell you concrete, I'll send you rebar, I'll fix the trucks, I'll treat the injuries, I'll do the construction work, like I'll hire somebody else at the power plant. Your whole city is stoked when you bring in federal money. So check this out. By the 1970s, every state had multiple water projects. That's Jimmy Carter's hit list. Jimmy Carter said, wait a minute, Florida needs 6 dams? Jimmy Carter's like, Delaware needs dams? Jimmy Carter says, 180 dams on one river in Oregon? I don't know, guys. Jimmy Carter's hit list, number 37, was a list of wasteful water projects. Jimmy Carter thought maybe we should just kind of kick back on the federal dollars a little bit. And I don't know, like, Jimmy Carter was probably like, he gets a bad reputation for having been a horrible president. I don't know. I feel like I've seen worse. But like Jimmy Carter's idea about like watching the federal dollars, to me, that's a really smart idea. Like just saying, like if we're all paying for it, I'd like to know what it is. But can you imagine every congressman was like, wait, Delaware's good, don't look at Delaware. And Florida's like, wait, don't look at Florida. And whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, you want money so you can get elected again. So the entire US Congress was like, nope, nothing to see here. And when Jimmy Carter would like come to their state and be like, hi, I'm running for re-election for my second term as president, all the senators would be like, boo! And so his presidency was totally sabotaged. He did not have a second term, and his hit list was like swept under the rug. And everybody went back to wasting federal money on unneeded dams. Sad story of number 37 is Jimmy Carter probably found some really wasteful spending, and everybody basically House of Cards him. House of Cards did him. He got House of Cards.
Cards.
Yeah. He got all House of Cards. Does everybody know what I mean when I say House of Cards? It's a television show about intrigue and subterfuge.
Basically, they just got corrupted.
Yeah, I mean, he got,
Talking about Kevin Spacey.
yeah, but different, not private life, not,
Related to the show.
reaching below the,
Choma.
Nope.
Oh.
Nothing to see.
What is that? Sorry.
what is what?
This red
This?
liquid.
This is poison.
I had a feeling.
Sake.
Tastes like chicken.
Because is it like pomegranate juice or is the bottle red?
This is a former Arizona iced tea little bottle that has been living with me for maybe 3 years now. And I put a little lanyard on it. We're gonna do that. The building of state water projects hit a little bump in the road with Jimmy Carter, and then we were able to ruin his political career and keep wasting money on dams. Until this thing happened, number 38 in California, at a place called the Kesterson Reservoir, which is right around here somewhere. Kesterson Reservoir is like in the Central Valley. And I hope everybody understands gravity.
Is it the ocean?
That's the ocean.
Okay.
These are the mountains. And water will pour downhill. Kesterson Reservoir is a pond in the Central Valley of California, and it's a wildlife refuge. And short story, it filled up with poison and all these birds got deformed and everybody saw it on the news.
What,
Some-
you mean the reservoir?
Yeah, in the reservoir. And children, this is another bit of history that goes way before your generation, but when I was born, television was not a big part of everybody's daily life. And by the time I was 10 years old, people's television viewing had multiplied 100-fold. The same way that you all spend more time on your cell phones than I did when I was your age. There was a generational moment when television reached everybody. And all over the United States, people were like, oh my God, you can get news from California. And everybody goes to check the news from California. And they see crazy bird deformities at this wildlife refuge. All these birds were born tweaked, the eggs were all poisoned. And the funny thing is that poison was not an agricultural product. This was not pesticide, this was not fertilizer. It's a naturally occurring mineral in the soil. But when you water the heck out of it, you get more of it downstream. Watch this. In the Central Valley of California, selenium is naturally occurring. Here it is, selenium. Naturally occurring. And because we turned that desert into farms, all that water running over the dirt will wash out or leach more selenium. So let me try to retell that story now in a way that you can package this into your notes. Watch this. When we started watering all of this, America was like, whoa, I want dams. So the federal government started giving everybody money for dams. Millions of dollars, millions of dollars, millions of dollars. Everybody starts building dams. Meanwhile, in California, our economy revs up. We start planting all these trees and selling almonds and selling citrus in Orange County. Made this guy named Richard Nixon. McDonald's got started here. There was a lot of crazy economic activity. Everybody driving around. Beep, beep. California's firing on all cylinders. And then right at about the time that everybody really started watching the daily news, like one of the first major national stories was, holy crap, all of these deformities in a wildlife refuge. Because when you start watering the heck out of dirt, things are going to change in that dirt. Like we accelerated the leaching of naturally occurring selenium, which built up to toxic levels in a wildlife refuge. You know all those words put together? Accelerated the leaching of a naturally occurring toxin called selenium. Built up to hazardous levels in a wildlife refuge. And basically America got over it. People were like, all right, that's it. No more effing with the water. We're done. And so California kind of got the party started. And California kind of put the nail in the coffin for big federal water projects. Like nowadays, when we need more water, we go to conservation of water. It's so much cheaper to use less water than it is to build dams. Like efficiency is less dollars than more capacity. Let me plug me in, please. That's it. Okay. I could have showed you the movie, but we saved about a half hour. These are all the famous parts that I think the College Board could ask you about. Hoover Dam will also come up later. Central Valley Water Project. Ketcherson Reservoir, Tulare Lake is a famous example. Jimmy Carter's story is interesting. Maybe not the hit list itself. But we got about 15 minutes. Let's please switch to assignment 4.2.
We have like 7 minutes before you
I don't care what you say. I'll speak. Sure. How dare you correct me? This beard speaks authority.
Now you just gotta do like the stand that they taught you how to do.
Yeah, we kinda did.
Besides all the deformed birds.
Well, yeah, besides that, but like, we started it and we ended it, so we got like the longest time with federal money.
Was there any chance that anybody actually knew that was happening and they kind of let it happen on purpose so that it would make this water project less glamorized so that California could end it sooner?
I like conspiracies, but I've heard like the person at the top of the bureaucracy say that they just messed up. And interestingly, it was like a little blip in engineering where when you get really close to sea level, drainage rates are really difficult to discern. And this was much closer to sea level than this looks. And so pretty much they just, my understanding of the story, because I've read a lot about it, is that they just got the engineering wrong on flow rates and water volume. It's like 60 pages in Cadillac Desert. Okay. Did we already do the vocab on assignment 4.2?
No.
So let's do vocab. Ready, set, go.
It's just more of a pronunciation thing.
Go ahead.
Phloem.
Phloem. is all of the sugar water that flows down a tree. It's actually the tissue that has that. So the tubes that have stuff going downhill are phloem. The tubes that have water going up from the roots are called xylem. So phloem down and xylem up, they're the circulatory tubes in a tree. What else?
Stands.
A stand is a cluster of trees.
Okay.
Next. Yeah. I'll do as a lecture day after tomorrow, or yeah, in a few days. Next. That's all. I like it when you don't ask me stuff. What? Silviculture is farming trees. Tree farm. Like for firewood. Ava, oh my God. I don't know, you have something in your hair, so it looked like you had an earbud. You had something in your hair, so it looked like you had an earbud, but then I realized it's just your hair. What else? Yes? That's stuff that nature does for free. So things that we benefit from that we don't have to pay for, like a public service. An example would be like filtering runoff. No more vocabs on 4.2? Isabel, that was in a question, not in the vocab chunk. Is that what you were asking? All right. I want to skip around a couple of study goals and go really fast. Number 16. I hope you have a really long list from the book.
There's only 4, right?
Forests do a bunch of stuff. Like they regulate climate by absorbing carbon. They clean water. They prevent erosion. They make topsoil. They clean the air. They cool land. They provide critical habitat. They give us firewood. Forests do a lot of stuff for us, and the College Board loves this question. Like, this will be useful on the AP test, I promise. Number 17, a lot of stuff to copy down. But did the book tell you what percentage of wood becomes firewood globally?
90. What?
63.
Yeah.
Where does it say?
More than half of the world's logging is for firewood. Your book said 63% of all logging is for firewood, which is kind of a trip because we think of our species as being so modern. Like around here in this room, very few of us get any energy from burning wood. But globally, that's still the #1 energy source. Humans get more BTUs from burning wood than from coal or petroleum or natural gas or nuclear or any other source. I am blown away by that fact, that our species is so relatively old school. 18, 19, 20. I assume you can use your book. Number 21, though. I got little drawings for you with little notes. And the notes are important. The drawings are kind of important, but the notes are really important. How many minutes?
1.
You just wait until tomorrow.
21 will be on Friday. Write that down somewhere.
My eye was unfortunate that morning.
Luke, stop streaming, please. Ooh, that's a gnarly.